Okay, so before we get started, I want to share something that took me a hell of a long time to understand. This war, it's internal and it's not technical. And I wrote this book called Lessons from a Terrible Photographer. And it's for creatives who feel stuck, burned out or quietly disconnected from their own work, even though they know what they're doing. This book isn't about gear or technique. It's about the stuff that no one really talks about, doubt, comparison, burnout, and figuring out why the work feels harder than it used to. I didn't write it as a roadmap or some place of authority. I'm not a guru. I wrote it in a way that I wish someone had written to me. It's honest, it's human, and focused way more on the why we make the work than how. This book is available for pre-order right now. I'm pretty excited about it. Head over to terriblephotographer.com to learn more. All right, back to the show. So in 1989, a sociologist by the name of Ray Oldenburg wrote a book called The Great Good Place. This book, The Great Good Place, was about cities, about neighborhoods, and about why some places feel alive while others feel dead, And at the center of his research was this concept, the third space. And Oldenburg said that we live in three spaces. So the first space is your home, right? It's your private life, where you sleep, where you eat, where you exist as yourself. And the second space is your work. It's your office. It's your studio. It's your productive life where you perform a role, where you produce output. But that third space, this third space is different. The third space really is the pub, It's the coffee shop. It's the barber shop. It's the church. It's the park bench where regulars gather. It's the neutral ground. Nobody owns this space. Nobody's in charge. It's the leveler. The doctor and the dishwasher can sit at the same table. Your job title doesn't matter. Your resume doesn't matter. And conversation really is the main activity here. It's not networking, even though sometimes that happens. It's not transactions. It's just talking, or just an activity and talking. It's accessible. You can show up or not show up. There's no commitment. There's no obligation. It's playful. There's humor. There's lightness. It's not serious all the time, but mostly, and most importantly, it has regulars. The same people consistently show up week after week, month after month, and you become known, you become seen. And so Oldenburg called these places a home away from home. Does that sound familiar? A place where you can exist without performing, without producing, without proving anything, just being. And he argued that these spaces are essential because without these spaces, we become isolated. It's transactional, lonely. And here's the problem, and I bet you know what I'm about to say. We don't have them anymore. My name is Patrick Four, and this is the Terrible Photographer podcast, where we have honest conversations about creativity and identity and discovering your voice. Today is episode 44, and this is part 4, the finale of a 4-part series I'm calling the long middle. Now, the long middle is that specific season in a creative life where you've mastered the skills, you've built the business, you've done everything quote unquote right, but something still feels off, You're good at what you do, but you feel invisible. You're successful, but perhaps lonely. So in part 1, we talked about the island and the loneliness that comes from when you get so good at something that fewer and fewer people can actually see what you're doing. You're Joshua Bell. Remember Joshua Bell in the subway playing the Stradivarius violin. Everyone is just walking by. And in part 2, we talked about the costume, how we hide behind professional roles and personas instead of showing up as ourselves, as human and how we can't find community because we're all dressed as stagehands, terrified of being seen without our armor. And last week in part 3, we talked about the enemy, the hierarchies, and the gatekeeping that divide us, how we're all complicit in informing the systems that hurt us. And so today in part 4, we're talking about the third space and how we actually build that community and how we find witnesses and how we get off this motherfucking island. So if this is your first episode, welcome. You can jump in anywhere. And as always, you can email me anytime. My email is in the show notes. So with that said, let's get into it. So here is my question. Maybe this is your question as well. Why don't we have third spaces anymore? Well, first, the suburbs killed walkable gathering places. You can't spontaneously run into people when everyone is driving their Toyotas everywhere. And secondly, work from home culture collapsed the first space and the second space into the same room. Your bedroom is now your office or your studio. There's no separation. And social media promised community, but delivered performance or comparison. And Instagram isn't a pub, it's a stage. Everyone's performing and no one's connecting. And then 2020 happened. Everybody knows what happened in 2020. We lost even the illusion of the third space. Not just temporarily, not just during those stupid lockdowns. COVID didn't just pause third space culture. It put a knife in its kidney. And we're still living in this wreckage. Here's how it happened. For 2 years, we were told that gathering was dangerous, right? That proximity was a threat. And despite your views on this topic, I don't particularly care. It really was the reality of what happened. We were told that gathering was dangerous, that proximity was a threat, that the safest thing that you or I could do was to stay home alone. And so we adapted, we learned to work from home. We learned to order everything online. We learned to exist in isolation. And then the world opened back up. But here's the thing. We didn't. I mean, I still get food delivered to my house and it's left on my doorstep, on my fucking doorstep, because I don't want to open the door and face another human being because of the shame of him delivering ice cream and cold brew at 11 p.m. at night on a Tuesday. Because here's the thing that nobody talks about, right? We got used to a certain lifestyle that came from isolation. We got used to not having to be quote unquote on, or not having to make small talk, or not having to navigate the social anxiety in a physical space. We got really comfortable in our sweatpants, in our controlled environments, in our algorithmically curated digital feeds. And when the opportunity came to go back out into the world, to show up in coffee shops and meetups and social gatherings, a lot of us just, didn't. I remember meetup.com. Do you remember this site called meetup.com? It was especially popular in the States. Before COVID, it was thriving. You could find a group for anything: photography walks, coffee meetups, singles clubs, book clubs, creative nights, 30-somethings, 20-somethings, 40-somethings. It didn't, there was groups for everything, right? It was how people found their third space in cities where they didn't know anyone. And I actually have found good friends by using this app. And so you would show up on a bar on a Tuesday night, and it was awkward as hell, looking for a table of strangers who were also awkward as hell, all trying to connect over a shared interest, right? Or at least a shared demographic. And it worked, not always, but often enough. But COVID killed it. Not literally. I mean, I think the site still exists, but the culture around it is dead. I mean, I looked recently. There are groups still there, but the events, everything is sparse and it's poorly attended. And I can tell that it doesn't get much traffic. People stopped showing up and they never came back. And I don't think it's just Meetup, you know? I've noticed that coffee shops are quieter, not less attended, but quieter, you know? Everyone's on their laptops, their headphones are in, they're working alone in a crowded room. Bars maybe are less social. People scroll their phones between conversations. Workshops and meetups that used to fill up now struggle to get a handful of people to commit. And I don't think it's because we're busier. I think it's because we forgot actually how to show up. You know, we learned how to be alone and we forgot how to be together. And there's research on this. Social scientists call it social atrophy. This the same way a muscle weakens when you don't use it, your capacity for social connection weakens when you isolate for too long. You know, small talk feels harder, eye contact feels more awkward, showing up to a room full of strangers feels kind of impossible. And the longer that you wait, the harder it gets. So here we are in 2025, almost 2026, almost 5 years later, the world is open. Restrictions, they're gone. We can gather, we can meet, we can build these third spaces again, but we're not doing it. We're just scrolling, you know, we're still working from home. Everybody wants to work from home, right? Work from home jobs are the most competitive. We're still avoiding the discomfort of the physical presence, not because it's dangerous, but we've forgotten how. Now, I need to acknowledge something here because I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I told her about Ray Oldenburg's third space concept. Now, we don't have them anymore. And she thought for a moment and she looked at me and she said, you know, Reddit is my third space and so is Discord. And I don't think she's wrong, you know. We don't have the supper clubs anymore. We don't have the bingo nights. We don't have the neighborhood bar where everybody knows your name. But we do have these weird digital spaces where people find each other, pockets of the internet where people can build connection for better or for worse. You know, Reddit communities built around specific interests, and Discord servers for niche hobbies, Slack groups, you have email lists, even comment sections on YouTube videos where people show up week after week, as weird as that sounds. And look, some of these spaces are deeply unhinged, right? There are subreddits dedicated to rating the aesthetic quality of different fonts. Bunch of fucking nerds. Discord servers where people argue about the correct way to peel a banana. It's true, look it up. YouTube comment sections where people, the same 5 people, have been debating about camera straps ergonomics for the past 3 years. So many goddamn nerds. It's bizarre, it's stupidly nerdy, but maybe it's beautiful. It's the internet. It's the digital reality that we all live and exist in. And this isn't social media in the traditional sense, right? They're not on Instagram. They're not performing for an audience. This really is sort of closer to a pub, right? People give each other shit. It's neutral ground. Conversation is the main activities. Regulars show up. There's rhythm, a culture. There's inside jokes. And look, it's not ideal. Oldenburg was talking about actual physical spaces, places where you could walk into, places where you could see someone's face and read their body language and share a drink and exist in the same room. And digital cannot replace that. But it's the age that we live in. And look, it's also a blessing, right? Some people, especially neurodivergent people, people with social anxiety issues, people with mobility issues, people in remote areas, people who work weird hours, some people find real community in these digital third spaces. So here's the nuance. Not all digital spaces are performance platforms. But Instagram is performance, LinkedIn is performance, Twitter or X is performance. But a small Discord server where the same 12 people talk about film photography every Tuesday night, right? Or debate about an ice hockey team, that might actually be a third space, or a subreddit where people generally help each other through, sicknesses or life stages, like for new moms or new dads or whatever, right? That might actually be a third space. But here's the key difference. It's, are you performing or are you being seen? Are you curating an image or are you sharing a struggle? Are you collecting followers or are you connecting with actual human beings? But here's what I also know. These digital only third spaces, they're kind of incomplete, Even though you might be sharing vulnerable things, there's still a little bit of performance factor going on, right? You need the physical presence too. You need to look someone in the eye. You need to sit across from someone at a table. You need to exist in a room where you can't edit yourself before you speak, because digital spaces, even the good ones, still let you hide even a little bit. You can craft your message, you can delete and rewrite, you can present the version of yourself that you want people to see. And physical presence doesn't really let you do that so much. Physical presence forces you to be human and awkward and uncertain and real. So here's the challenge. And this challenge is to me just as much as it is to you. Go touch some grass. I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot online as an insult. Go touch some grass, weirdo. But I really mean it sincerely, right? I even tell my daughter Lucy sometimes when she's spending way too much time on her stupid iPad, hey, Lucy, go touch some grass, meaning go call a friend, go to the park, right? Go to the dollar store, go to the ice cream shop with a friend, go do something real in real life, go do something tangible with an actual human being. It really means do real things with real people in real spaces that have nothing to do with the internet connection. Go to a coffee shop and strike up a conversation with another creative. Unless it's me and I have my headphones in. If I have my headphones in, that really tells you just to leave me alone. But if I don't, feel free to say hi, Join one of those local camera clubs, not the Facebook group. Those are dumb. But the actual in-person meetups, seriously. I know camera clubs are kind of cheesy and lame, and it's usually a bunch of retired guys talking about photos of barns and old cars. But who knows? It could be fun. You could shake things up a little bit. Maybe take a workshop for fun, right? Not an online course, but an actual in-person workshop where you're in the room with other people. And maybe, if you're so bold, friends, maybe host an event, host a workshop, host a camera club. Who knows? It could start something really interesting for you. Look, digital third spaces can be part of your ecosystem. They're definitely part of my ecosystem. A lot of what Terrible Photographer is sort of a digital third space, but they can't be all of it. You need both. You need the Discord server where you talk about the gear or the latest Christopher Nolan film at midnight. You need the coffee shop where you admit that you're struggling with getting work and someone looks you in the eye and says, yeah, me too. But for photographers and for creatives in general, the problem runs a little deeper. We used to have physical third spaces, the analog photography lab where you would run into other photographers while developing film. You'd wait for prints, you would talk shop, you would see what other photographers was working on. The camera store where you an hour talking to the guy behind the counter, not buying anything, just talking. I remember my dad, who was a photographer at one point himself, would talk to his film guy, Clyde, at his lab, Freeport Photo, for 45 minutes. And I just would sit there looking at photography magazines, especially the ones with scantily clad women, enjoying smelling the chemicals. And I'm often sad that I don't have my own Clyde, my own photo lab that I can show up. That photo lab in my hometown is now a Jiffy Lube. How sad is that? There used to be things like industry happy hours that weren't about networking necessarily, just photographers grabbing drinks after work. Studios where you would assist, where there would be a staff, where you would build actual relationships over time. So what killed it? I think we all know the answer to that question. Digital workflow. You work from home now. There's no lab to visit. We order everything online. There's no camera store to hang out in, The gig economy. There are no studios with staff, just freelancers working alone, hiding behind the glow of our MacBook Pros. And now we're here. We're successful, but we're isolated. We're surrounded by peers online, but feeling like we're speaking a different language sometimes. Like Sarah from episode 40. Remember Sarah? She's editing alone in the dark, spare bedroom, feeling invisible despite her success. And it's me leaving the APA mixer after 2 minutes because I couldn't figure out how to just, be in the room without a role. It's you scrolling Instagram at midnight, looking at other photographers' work, feeling simultaneously inspired but also inadequate. It's connected to thousands of people and known by none of them. So we try to fix it, We go to the networking events, we go to the trade shows, we go to the conferences, we go to the meetups, and it doesn't work. Because networking events aren't a third space. They're a second space disguised as a third space. You're at the networking event, you're still performing a role. You're the successful photographer, the professional expert. The goal is transactional, right? It's to get clients, make connections, build your reputation, your personal brand. Nobody is vulnerable because everyone is auditioning. Who do you shoot for is not a third space conversation. Who do you shoot for is a status check. It's a hierarchy test. It's a second space in the bar. And that's the difference between networking and community. Because networking asks, what can you do for me? But community asks, how are you really? Networking is about collecting contacts, and community is about being witnessed. Networking happens at conferences and community happens at a table. And I've tried to find the third space and I've failed every single time. The APA mixers performed professional but left after 2 minutes. The Clubhouse app during COVID tried to contribute, got dismissed, internalized the hierarchy. Trade shows, a sea of black shirts, all performing success. Even at Taylor Guitars, my full-time corporate job, I had colleagues. I worked with talented individuals, but I felt completely alone. And the only exception was one person, right? It's Leslie, 2,800 miles away in Nashville. She makes podcasts. She understands this craft. She sees the work that no one else sees. She texts me about sound design and story ideas and pacing and the tiny decisions that don't show up in the final product, but make the difference between good and great. She's one of the 7 people who stopped in the subway and listened to Joshua Bell. And the irony here is brutal. My only real third space relationships, well, they're digital, they're distant, and with people that I've actually never met in person. So here's what I've realized. You can't find a third space. You have to build it. And I've been waiting for it to appear, waiting to be invited, waiting for someone else to create it and let me in. But that's the same problem from episode 41. I'm waiting for permission again. I'm waiting for the role, the call sheet, the established contract that tells me that I'm allowed to be in the room. But the third space, it just doesn't work like that. The third space doesn't exist until someone else creates it. And it doesn't start with community. It starts with one person. And here's the part that sucks. It requires vulnerability. Not get to know someone, trust them, be vulnerable, but be vulnerable, see who responds, and build from there. And this is the opposite of how we've been taught to operate. We've been taught to protect ourselves, to perform competence, to never show weakness until we're sure it's safe. But third space doesn't work that way. You have to risk rejection. You have to go first. You have to take off your mask before you know if the other person would do the same. You have to risk rejection. You have to go first. You have to take off the mask before you know the other person will do the same. That's the only way to filter the actual community versus networking contacts. And so here's the other thing that I've learned. You don't need 100 photographer friends. You need 2 or 3 people to actually see you. And there's research on this. Dunbar's number. We can actually maintain only about 5 close friendships at a time. I'm not talking about acquaintances or contacts, but close friends. People who know what you're actually struggling with, and people who witness the work, people who see you without the costume. So stop trying to build a network and start trying to find your people. And it requires consistency, not intensity. One deep conversation at a conference doesn't create the third space. Third space requires showing up repeatedly. It's the regulars who make a hub. It's the weekly coffee with one photographer is worth more than an annual epic meetup with 50 people. Because the third space isn't about an event. It's about the rhythm, the pattern, the predictability. Knowing that next Tuesday, you'll be at the same table with the same people talking about the real stuff. So how do you actually build it? Here's what I think it looks like in person. Step 1, reach out to one person, not 10 people, someone whose work that you respect, someone who seems real, not constantly performing on Instagram, not always crushing it, not hiding behind the professional persona. And don't reach out to pick their brain or to collaborate or to network. It's just something like, hey, I've seen your work online. It's been amazing. I would love to hang out and talk shop. You want to grab some coffee? That's it. That's the whole message. Which brings us to step 2. Show up without your costume. Don't be the stagehand. When you meet them, don't lead with your resume. Don't perform success. Don't hide the wrong work. Talk about what you're actually dealing with. I'm shooting headshots and I feel like I have to apologize for it. I'm shooting Godocs and I just feel less legitimate. I'm jealous when I see other photographers' successes and I hate that about myself. I haven't made personal work in 2 fucking years and I don't know why. That's the real shit. That's the uncomfortable shit. The stuff that you don't necessarily post on Instagram. So, which brings us to step 3, witness, don't fix. And when they share something vulnerable, resist the urge to immediately offer solutions. I know, especially for the guys out there, this will be the difficult one. And don't try to one-up them with your own story. Also, this is hard for guys. Don't say, oh, here's what has worked for me. Just, yeah, me too. Or, man, that sounds really hard. The goal isn't problem solving. It's actually just being seen. Because when you witness someone without trying to fix them, you give them permission to exist as they are, right? Messy and human and uncertain. And that's what the whole third space is all about. Step 4, try to make it regular. At the end of the conversation, say something like, hey, same time next month, same coffee shop, same table. Consistency creates safety. Safety creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates connection. So, brings us to step 5, expand, but carefully. If it works with one person, maybe you can add one more, maybe 2, but keep it small, 3 to 5 people maximum. Because the moment this group gets too big, it stops being a third space and starts being a performative networking event. The moment someone says, hey, we should turn this into a meetup group and invite more people, pump those brakes, right? Big groups require performance. Small groups allow presence. Here's what you actually talk about if you're curious. Talk about the edit that you're stuck on. Talk about the client who's driving you fucking crazy. Talk about the work that you're proud of but hiding. The gear you can't afford, the imposter syndrome, the jealousy, the exhaustion, the gap between who you are and where you thought you would be. And here's what you don't talk about: how busy you are. That's performance. The latest big client, that's status. Your gear, unless you're actually struggling with gear shame, right? Industry gossip, resist that urge. That creates false intimacy without real connection. Third space isn't about impressing each other. It's about dropping the need to impress anyone. Okay, so let's bring this full circle. Over the past 4 weeks, we've been talking about the long middle, that season in a creative life where you're good at what you do, but something still feels off. In episode 40, we talked about the island, the loneliness that comes when you get so good at something that fewer and fewer people can see and understand what you're actually doing. You're Joshua Bell on the subway playing a Stradivarius while everyone is just walking past. You're Sarah editing alone in a dark room, feeling invisible despite your success. You're operating at a level of the craft that most people cannot perceive or understand, and that shit is isolating. In episode 41, we talked about the costume, how we hide behind professional roles and personas instead of actually showing up as ourselves, how we need to establish contracts, call sheets, stages, microphones to feel legitimate, how we can't find community because we're all dressed as stagehands, terrified of being seen without our armor. And in episode 42, we talked about the enemy, the hierarchies and the gatekeeping that divides us, how pro photo versus Godox isn't about light quality, it's about access, how wedding photographers apologize for just being wedding photographers, and how we enforce the system that hurts us because we're afraid, we're terrified of being at the bottom, and how we're all complicit of all of this. And now we're here, episode 44, talking about how we actually build community, how we actually find witnesses, how we get off this motherfucking island. Here's the truth. Listen, you can't do this alone. You have to start alone. You have to be the first one to take off the mask. You have to be vulnerable before you know it's safe. That's the cost of community, but it's worth it, you know? Now, I need to tell you about something that I am trying, right? I've been thinking about this for months, actually. How do I actually build a third space for people who listen to this podcast and who have read the book, for people in the long middle who feel like Sarah feels, what I feel? And I kept running into the same problem. Most platforms are designed for performance, right? Discord servers can work if they're small, if they're intentional, but they also can create pressure to be on, to keep up, to contribute constantly. Facebook groups have algorithms that reward engagement, not connection. And to be honest, not a huge fan of Facebook. Slack channels can feel like work. I still have PTSD about Slack notifications from my corporate days. Instagram DMs feel like networking. So I'm trying something even simpler, something almost aggressively, stupidly simple. I'm calling it, you ready for this? The table. I love naming things. It's the best part of this job. It's not a community platform. It's not a course. It's not a membership. It's just a table. What do I mean? A digital table, which sounds like a contradiction to this whole thing, but here we are. Here's how it works. It runs on email. Just email. The thing that your parents use, that we all use, the thing with zero dopamine hits. There's no like button. There's no app, there's no feeds, there's no metrics, there's no posting requirements, there's no gamifications, there's no streaks, there's no you're falling behind notifications. Some weeks I'll send an email, a question someone raised, a short reflection, a thought that doesn't need commentary. Maybe something funny, maybe something weird, maybe a story about a shoot that went sideways, maybe venting about a client who makes me want to quit photography altogether. Maybe just, hey, has anyone met a Leica owner who doesn't tell you that they own one in the first 5 minutes of them talking to you? Some weeks there's nothing. Listen, for this whole thing, silence is allowed. Lurking is encouraged. You're not required to have thoughts. Sometimes you're just there. You can reply to the group. You can reply privately. You can reply not at all. You can send a single emoji. I don't really give a fuck. You can write 3 pages. I don't really recommend doing that. Or you can just forward it to someone else who needs to read it. Nobody is behind. Nobody's getting buried, right? Nothing demands attention. It's just email. It's just email. The lowest stakes communication format that we all have, and it's beautiful. It's just a long chain of terrible madness. You see what I did there? It's closer to really just like passing notes in class than participating in a forum, except these notes are sometimes about creative existential dread or failure, and then sometimes about the best kind of whiskey. Who knows? And sometimes it's about whether Wes Anderson is overrated. I think he is. It's a pub table, but everyone is wearing sweatpants. Probably, if you're like me, maybe you're wearing sweatpants, and nobody has to drive home, so you can drink as much as you want. And here's the important part. This is not for everybody. This is for people who are in the long middle, people who have done the work, who know the craft, who aren't beginners, but something feels off, lonely, or undefined. People who are tired of performing, tired of hiding, tired of the hierarchy. People who want to talk about the real shit, but who are also share dumb memes about histogram anxiety. People who can hold space for both. I'm struggling with creative identity, and I just spent 20 minutes on a phone call arguing with a client about contracts. If that sounds like you, if you want a seat at the table, just email me. The email address is in the show notes. There's no join now button. There's no landing page. There's no automation, just an email. Okay, to sum up what this is, I feel like I need to clarify because I feel like maybe it's a little overcomplicated. I said a lot of words there. I just need to simplify it. It's just email, right? It's one long email chain. So if you email me and if I reply all, it goes to everybody, right? If you reply all, it goes to everybody. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, all you need to do is just send me an email. Email's in the show notes with the subject line, I'd like a seat or something else. I don't really care. That's it. That's the whole email. Or write me a novel. I don't really care. There's no rules to this, all right? I do need to be clear about something. This doesn't replace the work of building your own table. This doesn't replace reaching out to one person in your city and having coffee. It doesn't replace showing up without your costume and being vulnerable. The table is just one table. It's my attempt of building the third space for us. It's my weird experiment in seeing email. The boring, old, reliable email can be a place where creative people can stop performing and actually start connecting. Will it work? I have no idea. Maybe 5 people will sign up and we'll just send each other pictures of our dogs. I will send a photo of Loki the Border Collie to anyone who asks. Maybe it'll be more than that. Maybe it'll be the thing that some of us need, or maybe it won't. Who knows, right? But you still have to build yours. This can be a part of it, but it can't be all of it. So with all that being said, here's what I know. You can't outsource belonging. You can't scroll your way to community. You can't consume your way to connection. You have to show up in person, fucking vulnerable without the armor. That's the only way to do it, right? But it's worth it. Because when you find your people, when you find 2 or 3 humans who actually see you, who witness the work, who understand what you're actually trying to do, everything changes. Not because they fix your problems, but because you're not alone anymore. You're Joshua Bell in the subway playing with Stradivarius, but this time someone else stops to listen. Not just for 5 seconds, but for the whole goddamn piece. And when you finish, they don't just applaud. They say, yeah, I've been there too. Listen, the pub table exists, but only if we build it. One conversation at a time, one honest admission at a time, one person brave enough to go first. And if you want a seat at my table, email me. If you want to build your own table, reach out to one person this week. Either way, stop waiting for permission. So, this is the end of the Long Middle series. 4 episodes, 4 weeks. The island, the costume, the enemy, the third space. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me think out loud about this stuff. If these episodes resonate with you, share them with somebody who needs to hear them. And if you want to keep the conversation going, you know where to find me. So until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.